Hi everyone, just wanted to take a minute to finish off the factoring videos. This one is going to be on using the quadratic formula and using that to solve a quadratic equation, which you will always work. So this is the method that will 100% of the time work. It is relatively straightforward. You just have to make sure you simplify correctly. So as with any other scenario, you are going to start off by getting it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So they are using p's instead of x's, but that's okay. It doesn't matter, just whatever variable. So we'll subtract the 5p from both sides. And then we end up with 2p squared plus 4p minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, to solve this, as I said, we're going to use the quadratic equation. So the first thing we need to make sure we're aware of for the quadratic equation, or the quadratic formula, is going to be a is 2, b is 4, and then c is negative 1. And to reiterate, it is x is equal to, or I guess in this case p, but in general x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, if you're wondering where that comes from, if you pay close attention when you're completing the square, you actually are using all of these different terms, these different components of this formula in completing the square. So it comes from completing the square, and I'll leave that for you to think about. But anyway, ultimately what we need to do is we need to plug in our values of a, b, and c into this so that we can solve it. So I'm going to just write p instead of x. Now b, as I said, was 4, so it is negative 4 plus or minus the square root. B squared is 16 because it is 4 squared minus 4 times a is 2, so that's 4 times 2 is 8. And then c is negative 1, so minus 8. So minus and minus 8, so plus 8. And again, that's just coming from the fact that 4 times a, or 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. And so minus negative 8 is plus 8. All over 2 times a, and a is 2, so it's all over 4. So let's simplify the radical here. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 4. Now, the square root of 24 can be simplified. So if we look at it, it's the same thing, right? 24 is the same thing as 4 times 6, and I know what the square root of 4 is, so I can easily do that. So negative 4 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 all over 4. Now we're almost done. Every single one of these coefficients, the constant and the leading term here, leading coefficient, the 2, the 4, the 2, and the 4 are all divisible by 4. So ultimately we can get rid of one of the 2's, right? We can cancel them out. We need to be careful we don't touch what's in the radical because that is underneath the radical. We only can deal with things that are inside the radical and things that are outside the radical. We don't just start dividing things that are outside of the radical by things that are inside and so on and so forth. So we just need to be careful. So when we ultimately rewrite that, we can rewrite it as negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 6 over 2. So as I was saying, you can treat the 2 here like a coefficient, right? Because if you were dividing x by 2, you would just leave it as x over 2, but if you had a 2 in front, you could cancel it. So that's the same kind of thought process for the 2 in front of the square root. So ultimately, these would be my answers. Negative 2 plus the square root of 6 over 2, and then negative 2 minus the square root of 6 over 2. So hopefully this helps with you solving problems using the quadratic formula. And that ends some of our more algebraic methods of solving quadratics. The next one will be dealing with graphing. But I think it's important to see what it looks like coming through all the other methods. Have a good night.